Your forum thinks Grand Theft Auto 6 might just compete with Roblox and it might poach some of your creators. So, can you walk me through that? What would GTA 6 need to do to pull older Roblox players and creators back to Vice City?
I think so. So the read, and it's a great question. So the read that we were getting out of a lot of the conversation was around the idea that Roblox has, and it's you're starting to see more of it materialize. Roblox is starting to push more into higher fidelity type games. So not very low fidelity, blocky, polygon type games are rampant on Roblox, but they're trying to push the envelope with higher fidelity graphics, even increasing the payouts on those types of creator driven experiences in games, which is good, right? They want to lock in their player bases from the graduation of 13 to 16, from 16 to 18, and even further on. But if you consider that one of the highest fidelity graphics games is coming out in November, that might steal a lot of that thunder that they're trying to capture on their own platform. Is there an instance where there's coexistence that can materialize? Yeah, absolutely. But some of that might not be the case if GTA and Rockstar don't monetize their creators. So if you think about like the modding community and all of those types of like really holistically player focused, right? They're more focused on actually making their own mods and doing whatever they want to do, not caring about the monetization side. Those players will exist. But if you're paying people to create, kind of like what Roblox does or UEFN, then it becomes a different story. I think a lot of this becomes a moot point because online is not going to launch with the game in November. So you may see some of that player attrition happen because it's just a groundswell moment. It's a cultural phenomenon. Like this is, I mean, 13 years in the making and they've done no marketing and everybody's talking about this game. It's absurd. So maybe some interim fluctuations in November, December, January, maybe things start to even out and coexistence happens. But when online kicks in, the big question will be, is Rockstar going to compensate creators? And that might provide an easier pathway to graduate from one platform to the other. So it's a very good question to ask. It's more longer term. It's probably more of like an 18 to 24-month type of roadmap. But it is a good question to ask because Grand Theft Auto 5 came out 13 years ago. Online launched way later. And 13 years ago, we didn't have Fortnite. We didn't have live service games that compete head to head with each other, trying to capitalize on time. So it's a different environment today. It's a very, very different landscape.
I remember Rockstar, I think, hired a few people from Roblox or they partnered with Roblox to help build out the UGC and creator environment. And it's going to be fascinating because, I mean, Roblox is the creator world right now and GTA is coming. And will they have the chops? I don't know. But to your point, if they're going to start paying people to create environments, I think then all of a sudden they got something going. But I also don't think Rockstar needs to pay people to do that.
I agree. Like it's like I don't want to say like I agree, but like I agree, right? It's hard to say that this game isn't so powerful enough from a gameplay perspective, just from an attractive perspective, that people won't naturally migrate. Like they have to. Like it's the shiniest, newest object, period. And you're gonna get some diversion that happens. But is it at the expense of Roblox? Quite possibly. Those are influential players who are ready to take the leap into something completely new. This is the completely new.
So let's talk about something slightly different. The tension of who monetizes a player shows up on the console side too. This is something Colin and I talk about every week because it's Colin's favorite topic in the world right now. Xbox, are they going to put ads in your game? And the signal in here is that should make every gamer sit up a free ad supported tier of Game Pass. Microsoft's figuring out how to make money off you without you paying. What are you hearing about Xbox using advertising as a next monetization lever? Basically, doing the same brand education that makes in game ads safe for everyone.
I think it's I think the big item here is like in game, which many can think like the if you've played Bond, the usage of Land Rover and Coca-Cola machines is rampant in that game to the point of like even lines being thrown out of like never get in the way of a Land Rover, like all or I'm butchering it. But in game is a little bit different than like on platform. And if you consider how others do this, right? You have interstitial types of ads that exist in like CTV where breaks are naturally happening, or ads are running prior to like a pre-roll scenario, even YouTube, right? Pre-roll scenario before something actually starts up. Or even if you pause the screen, Amazon is happy to show you, or any platform is happy to show you an advertisement for something that you potentially need or want. The signals seem a little more softer than harder because of the hires and sort of the language that's being talked about. I think Colin does a really good job of picking up on those and running with them, potentially with reckless abandon, but running with them. And I kid because I do agree with him, but those signals are being run with very well. 30 million potential Game Pass subscribers, rising cost to consoles, affordability in gaming being a massive pain point for players, democratizing the access and funding the project through something like advertising is really the best lever that you can pull. And you see it in the TV space all the time. Free ad supported TV or FAST is a very prolific type of channel that exists. If you own a TCL or an LG or Samsung, even Roku, right, with the Roku channel, Tubi, they all have these free channels that either run catalogs of content or their own content and throw ads in between and interstitially, and that's how they monetize. Is it the most fruitful endeavor that they can undertake? It's yet to be seen, right? The signals don't extend that far enough for us to understand, hey, is this the saving grace? But advertising is a very high margin business. So what they can put together from an ad network perspective and monetize Xbox in that way seem like very good prospects on the Xbox side. It's definitely something that we want to keep more of an eye on, and especially if you consider where Roblox is going with their advertising endeavors, right? Sponsorship of actual games. So something like Grow a Garden gets so big that somebody wants to slap their label or logo on it and sponsor it for a week. They've done like the in-world builds, so like Walmart Land and things like that have existed. And then of course items, right? You can buy and purchase your own avatar items. The biggest difference I personally think, and this extends from sort of the traditional advertising world, is if you consider the measurement of what Roblox is asking for, the data signals are very different. It's players actually in game. It's digital signage. It's billboards. It's wearing the actual items. Yes, there are purchases of the items, which are clear signals, but some of the signals need to be not so much refined, but better understood by leadership and marketing officers, etc. The Xbox side of the equation might not have that problem. And I'll tell you why is because it's a pre-roll. If pre-roll ads exist prior to Game Pass booting up, or even prior to the console booting up, there's a runtime of the ad. There's a completion of the ad. You're actually getting, you know, traditional signals that advertisers can use and go back to, or either agencies can use or brands internally can use to justify how the ad is performing. Right? X amount of ads were seen versus skipped over, X amount of ads led to click throughs, or even if there's signals being picked up of like, hey, mobily this was searched for, X, they can piece together the measurement and the analytics to get a very clear picture of how things were going. Same thing with pause screens, right? If you're pausing a game for X amount of time, you can say, hey, X amount of the impression was done here. So I think they have a little bit of an easier runway to convincing endemic, so developers and publishers and CPGs, etc., those endemic brands and even non-endemic brands, right? Those who are kind of outside the purview of like gaming and CPG, whether it's services, etc. So I think it's a little bit of an easier runway for them.
Do you think overall this is good for gamers? Obviously, free games are good, but do you think is this inevitable, or do you see a place where gamers can revolt?
There's the old, and I'm one of those old, um, I mean, definitely not like spiritually, as you can see from here,
He's old,
type of
folks.
players. Yeah, I'm very young in this mortal shell. Uh, I think there will be a lot of backlash from the older demographics who have for the past 30 years never had to deal with this. Younger demos are unfazed by this. When they pick up a phone and they play a game, that it's at this point seemingly expected to run into advertisements. And the advertisements are structurally made to allow for those players to utilize them. So watch this ad, get a couple of lives. Rewarded ads are very commonplace these days. So younger demos may not have that much of a challenge with digesting advertising, and they might have an even easier challenge understanding that a game platform is inherently free and it's coming with a library of games to play. Mobile is very free to play and free to download and just get started. In a lot of instances, some of their games will monetize through like their gotcha systems, etc. But it's an even easier hurdle to overcome when you understand that you don't even have to put money into the slot machine to get the characters that you want. You can just kind of jump into the game that you want. So that's my logic sense of like how things will progress. Younger gamers could just sit there and revolt and say like, well, the catalog doesn't really speak to me because it's a number of games that like I don't care about. How many 10-year-olds are sitting there saying like, I really need to play Mass Effect 2. They should, but maybe a lot of them don't. Maybe they don't care about some of these games from our yesteryear.
It's funny. Last 2 weeks ago, I did a podcast with a guy named Zach Letter, and he got his start on 2007 on YouTube. He ended up having millions of subscribers, billions of views, and he decided to start a Roblox studio because of that. And we got into the conversation of ads, and he brought up the idea of, if you talk to someone who's a boomer right now, they're used to traditional TV, and if you watch a 30-minute show, they're willing to watch 8 minutes of ads during that 30-minute show. So that's about, I'm doing rough math, 25% of it. Really weak math. But then as you go down generations, our generation, right, more millennials, will deal with a few ads here and there, especially if it's before YouTube or before streaming. And he goes, as generations get younger, they don't deal with ads at all. And looking at trends at TikTok that I've seen recently, at least how TikTok advertises it, they're kind of folding them right into they don't even come off as ads anymore. And the same thing on Reddit. These sponsored posts are now just blending in very well. And I think it's interesting. And that's going to bring me up to this next point. If we're going to zoom out from games for a bit, you mentioned something in this report that Reddit is the arms dealer of an AI war. And I love that. It's the best line, I think, in the report. If search war is being waged, Reddit is the arms dealer. And everyone's AI is just being trained on it. Can you make this case for me? Why is Reddit the standout share gainer right now while Snap and Pinterest struggle?
If you want to live, you don't fight, right? That's the whole really bad quote from The Last Jedi, I think. So this statement was made because if you look at the advertising ecosystem right now, we're at a point of like massive inflection. And you have Google and OpenAI and Perplexity and some of these other like LLM type platforms who are at the ready and in some instances, like a ChatGPT's instance, actually introducing advertising. Like you mentioned, platforms like Reddit have their ways of throwing advertising in more seamlessly. Even when you search on Amazon, sponsored products are coming to the top more of a seamless manner, catching your attention and potentially getting you to click, and easier pathway to purchase. In a lot of instances, in many instances, been very successful. It's been a very easy thing to implement and actually see like material results come out of. If you consider that LLMs are at the next stage of monetizing this, they'll need content and answers that help justify a lot of the where the purchase intent is going to go. So Reddit and publishers and SEO type material is feeding the answer engine, the AEO portion of these types of LLMs, and really pushing the reinforcement of certain products, the recommendations around certain products, um, the pathway of how to sort of adopt and purchase things. So, like, if you type into ChatGPT, I'm a beginner in cycling. What are the best sort of beginner cycle bicycles to pick up? What are the best brands? Who do people gravitate towards? A lot of the sourcing from that's coming from Reddit. It's coming from these forums where authenticated real-time information is happening. These are not paid for recommendations. These are people on Reddit typing the same question, wondering, how do I get into cycling? What should I be getting? What products do I need? How far should I be going? How should I be training, etc. So that content, that's your arms, right? That's your armament to help you push the LLM into the next stratosphere, because the content is so authenticated, it's so natural, and it gravitates towards the products and services that people actually want. If advertising is going to be equipped to that and leveraged against that, you want as much authenticated real content as possible. You want the best answers as possible. And as you consider these two entities going head to head, like a Gemini or an OpenAI with ChatGPT, it's going to be a matter of, okay, who's going to play nicest with these types of community engines? So like a Reddit, for example, who might even want exclusivity to those? That could be an even bigger question to ask and potentially get an answer to. So it all culminates around the authenticated data that a community platform like Reddit can offer. I think that's super important. And you brought up like Pinterest and Snapchat, where a lot of communities can definitely exist and advertising products get pushed there, but it's not fed. It's not material that's fed into a system where the content is authenticated or real. Pinterest probably has a little bit more of a leg up there because people are creating their own visions for certain products and categories, albeit it definitely skews in certain directions, which is totally fine, but not clearly as leverageable as something like Reddit, where you have subreddits on. I mean, like subreddits on like, who would win in a fight, Goku or Superman, right? Like pages of like, no, it would be Superman, no, it would be Goku. Like, it's always been like the wiki thing of like, it's incredible that like a wiki page for like a Marvel character is potentially longer than like, the process for photosynthesis or something. Um, but that's really where a lot of that stems. And again, if the war is about to wage, like the one that we saw in the early 2000s, where Yahoo is on the rise and Google is on the rise, 10 different, you know, um, search engines that were competing for time and traffic. If that type of war is going to start again, content and discoverability of that content becomes it needs to be weaponized, and Reddit's one of the best ways to do it.
Well, let's talk about the war itself. You're calling this an overture for the second search war. The trigger is that clients aren't just asking about advertising on ChatGPT anymore, they're actually signing up for it. What did your paid search form actually see, and how does OpenAI taking ad dollars force Google to finally ship ad products on Gemini and AI mode?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting because the early days of ChatGPT ads and ChatGPT in general, brands were very not skittish, but they were more concerned about how they show up, right? And the discoverability on those engines, revolves around, probability of showing up and certain other aspects that funnel visibility up to the top. It's a platform where most people will not click out of, they will remain in and do most of their homework and research there. The biggest questions and the biggest concerns that we were getting in the immediacy was like, well, if most people are used to 10 blue links when you Google something, what does the landscape look like when an answer is being provided for you that gives you what you need and somebody doesn't even click out of that, right? And some of that like got quelled because as most like monetizable commercial searches exist, there's a myriad of others that are not related to that at all. Like, when does Mother's Day land on this year? Like, when does Easter land on this? Like questions that are way more general, right? What were last night's lotto numbers? Something that doesn't really have a direct correlation to like a purchase. So as those traffic numbers started to get decimated on the like publishing and more general query side, which had totally happened, the commercial side, where it's like, hey, Nike's, size 13 blue, right? Like you could get a product description page or links to like Foot Locker or whatever, like materializing very well. AI overview changed a lot of that now, and LLMs obviously have done a number of done some real big work on that side. But ultimately, brands were sitting there saying, okay, advertising is going to get rolled out on this. I don't know how to leverage it because I don't know if it's going to result in, just general ad impressions. I don't know if it's going to result in click through rates. I don't know if I'm getting leads out of this. A lot of unknowns. But we're now getting to a point where brands are more comfortable testing or even adopting these platforms because the measurement of it, or at least even the pricing schemes, are becoming attractive. And there's a bit of like a first to their being, getting onto the platform first is actually beneficial, but they're actually seeing or understanding that there's material results that can come out of it. And obviously there's always going to travel in that direction, but I think it's at the behest of agencies really pushing this and finally understanding and saying to these brands and services, your visibility is going to be there. There's going to be pathways to actually materialize and click. You will get your leads out of it. You will get results out of it, which is really strong. So that's a good signal to pick up from like what we've been having, the conversations that we've been having. The biggest, I think, turn here that makes this conversation so interesting is ChatGPT isn't charging or is charging, but is adding an option in their pricing scheme. Now, if you look at Google in the past, it's always been more of like a cost per click type of pricing scenario, right? A CPC. And that's very, in some instances can be very expensive, and in other instances can yield you very good results, right? You have to balance the idea of like, hey, you got to pay to play, and being there is very important. ChatGPT is charging on a CPC and a CPM basis, which is a cost per melee, or the cost per 1,000 impressions that you get. If you consider it, it does make a lot of sense because it's not a platform that invites clicking through to actually get to a result. So some brands may be comfortable with just having the visibility show up and not paying for expensive clicks to actually get through. It's a flexible and inviting way to get brands to interact with the platform, test it, or even adopt it further. So I like the idea that there's flexibility there, and I think brands are resonating. We've heard that from the agency partners that we talk to. The flexibility is very nice. I think that becomes a point of invitation where, you know, if you're not a traditional like CPG or apparel type brand, or like, maybe a local service, it's a nice option to have because you just kind of want visibility to show up and say like, hey, we're the roofer of choice in this, in this area. We're the, plumber of choice in this area. Maybe it leads to a phone call, but you're not paying for something a little more expensive to get your conversion.
That's fascinating. It's almost so you're paying for the impression. So if we use our Land Rover impression, right? If I say what are the safest SUVs I could purchase, Land Rover in theory can pay to say, "Hey, we're the safest SUV." And I say that because that kind of worries me because it's not that AI already doesn't hallucinate here and there, but all of a sudden now you're getting paid results here, and it's just like, oh, is this really the safest SUV, or is this just ChatGPT telling me?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, traditional search is still, you know, you're getting sponsored links that come above
Yeah.
what you would normally search for, and you have to do a little bit of digging. Some people, look, most people are not going to dig further. The old joke is like, where's the best place to bury a dead body?
In
The
your yard.
second page of a Google search. Like
Right.
it's like nobody's taking the extra step to go that next page.
Yeah.
They may scroll down to try and find exactly what they're looking for, but a lot of sponsored links, they work, they do their job. Same with Amazon, right? Like, best podcast microphone, and it's, giving you the best recommended and the best sponsored one that's showing up. And a lot of that refinement is happening in like the product description page, but it's also that brand paying for the placement to be up there. Is it true? I don't know. You have to do your homework, but for most people, that's the first, visible sign of a product that they'll see.
What's if you had to make a call on the timetable for Google's ad response? When do you think that's going to be?
Oh boy. Uh, there's two schools of thought here. Like, if you're in the driver's seat, which they are, the schools of thought are, we don't really need to do anything because we're not feeling the pressure. And the other school of thought is, we needed something yesterday. So in a lot of ways, like some coin toss here, right? And I think the answer is I don't know, but I could see it happening these ways. Google can take their time and refine and understand and leverage the data and the traffic that they already have to be able to put out something that's top tier. Very Apple approach, right? They're not the first ones to invent like Bluetooth earbuds, but they've refined it into a product that like now everybody needs. So there's that type of mentality, or it's the scramble and let's put something out immediately. I think that happened, and their backfire was when Bard came out and got like the telescope information wrong, and everybody sort of laughed at it. And now nobody's laughing at Google anymore, right? But they still needed to put something out there because OpenAI was dominating the search conversation. I think they have a little bit of time to wait here because it's not so much of a proof of the technology. It's more so like we're asking for ad dollars here. We're asking for money to come in. And if dollars are on the line, I think Google's in a situation where they may not want to um, burn anybody materially as they roll out something that would be in like quote unquote testing phase. So they have a little bit of, I think they have a little bit of leeway, but at some point it's like 6 months, 12 months. So much of this stuff is moving so fast that you are going to be in the dust very soon. I don't know how Google views it. It's very hard to say, but time is your best friend and your worst enemy in this instance.
Yeah. Great. And let's tie this all together, how we could tie together streaming and gaming together. So, why is everyone cheering for Fox buying Roku? It got an overwhelming positive read from your execs, and the prize isn't just the content, it's Roku's data. What makes the combined entity a real threat to Netflix and Amazon, and why was Roku's video on demand data layer called the most important asset for this whole deal?
Yeah, the VOD data is important because it has purchase intent to it, right? It actually has like conversion intent. You're actually getting like you're getting paid dollars that actually materialize out of that. So when you consider how Fox could leverage that data, it's not just viewership, right? There's extra layers to it that make for the viewership intent to look even better. That's why there's so much power behind that. Um, I'll start from the beginning here. Overwhelming positive comments to this move, right? Broadcaster, streamer, elevating to a degree where now this entity could punch way above their weight. Not to the scale and size of something like, a Disney or a Netflix, right? The user bases on those are still very high. Let's not discount Roku. I think it's 50 million in the domestic household penetration that they have. I think 100 million maybe worldwide. So definitely not small potatoes, but you're combining a platform that has a very big distribution footprint with a platform that has highly viewed premium and free ad supported ad inventory. So Tubi, which Fox owns, very good viewership on the free ad supported side. You have the Fox sports channels, which also get a ton of viewership as well. And the Roku channel added into that alongside, their paid for tier like Howdy, and just the access to like all the free apps that are on there. You have a wide spectrum of inventory that isn't just the cheapest stuff that's on the planet, which they have. Like they have the free ad supported stuff, but they also have premium inventory. So if you're packaging this, or if you're thinking about this as a media buyer, you're coming into this and saying, okay, I want to do I'm looking to do a deal on these X amount of channels. I want to sponsor, and I want to have, ad placement in these areas, or run advertising against these types of live event games or whatever. You have that aspect of it, and then being able to fulfill the remainder of the budget programmatically across so many different inventory sources. That's a really compelling offer. It's a really compelling deal for them on the supply side. And again, like I said, it helps them punch above their weight and be competitive with the likes of a Netflix, who's obviously their content's robust, obviously their data is robust, and their reach and their distribution is massive, right? It's 200 million, whatever the number is, it's massive. So it puts them in a better conversation with advertisers because you have this wider spectrum of inventory to execute against. and you have data that helps support a lot of the decision making. You can target even better. Roku was already very good at targeting. They were all their household graph and their understanding of like that viewer was already really good. Now couple this in with stronger inventory and more data, you have a very compelling offer here for media buyers. And like I said, the the gist of this was like overwhelmingly positive, really smart move. It's a broadcaster, right? You have somebody who's, from the Fox perspective, it's a little bit of old school. So a lot of this hinges on like maybe giving a little bit of like the keys to the Ferrari to the tech guys and saying drive, and drive as fast as you can, or like, being that other kind of mentality of like, here are the keys to Ferrari, but keep it under 35. It's like, well, what's the point of owning this thing? So it will depend on, I think, the management team understanding the asset that they have and being able to leverage it the best way, which, if you consider how Fox is done with Tubi, that there's a lot of upside. There's a lot of really good upside because they understand the free ad supported market. They understand the live sports market. It's a lot of natural amplification here. So I couldn't. I was going into that conversation like, oh, I can't wait to hear like the pain points, and nobody really had anything negative to say. So it was just really, really positive stuff.
Interesting. It's gonna be fun to see how the sentiment around Roku in the next couple of weeks and months, and how people react to the platform. And I appreciate you breaking it down, right? I think this is a side of the world we never see on why it makes sense and how it makes sense, and monetarily, the KPIs, the data. I think it's all fascinating.
Yeah, it's these types of, it's so funny because like you see some of these deals materialize, like something that may have flown under a lot of people's radars is the fact that like, Walmart picked up Vizio, acquired Vizio like was maybe 2 years ago. I date, somebody needs to fact check me on the dates, but they recently acquired, as of this week, acquired a company called Vibe.co, which, for $1.5 billion is not like, not a cheap, we're picking up like Jim's tire shop and, Walla Walla, Washington or something. Like they picked up a demand side platform that helps with CTV, connected TV, and they actually also do, I believe they work on the creative side too. So they actually help develop creative and then execute it on connected TV platforms. The integration with Vizio there means, potential workflow operations that get even better. Because now Walmart's operating their white labeled ad network through the trade desk, Walmart Connect. Having that Vizio inventory there is pretty meaningful, right? You have, these TVs that are out in the wild that they can execute ads on.
Hmm,
More
fascinating.
operations, more, more power behind that. There's a lot of really good, like, strategic moves that are being done by some of these very large entities that help push their advertising capabilities to the next stratosphere. And again, circling it back to the conversation that we had earlier, these are the types of moves that I think maybe the leadership at Xbox are looking at and saying, somebody like Walmart, traditionally a retailer, is now getting more aligned to the media side of things and understands how much leverage is there. We are a traditional CPG, like they're traditional, like they sell a box, they sell software. It's not like a super hard, complex business to understand, but understanding, hey, we could be part of that media conversation just like somebody like Walmart is. And I think that's a little bit of the mentality, and knowing that Sharma comes from, the Instacart world. She comes from the Meta world where, advertising, that's their main business. Instacart does a lot of their, a lot of the margin that they're able to get is off of the advertising, their retail media network. So, understanding that they're sitting on a distribution pipeline that's pretty good, getting the content in order is part one, part two would be pushing ads through it. So I think that's where a lot of the signal is buried here when you think about zooming out and looking at the landscape.